Hey Simmers, welcome to the Whispering Woods Collab, a collaboration of over 40 Simmers, led by Simspiration, where we turn the Sims worlds into a world of fantasy and wonder. Some of the creators involved in this collaboration have built enchanted castles, fairy glades, and so on. I opted to build a little hut in the middle of an enchanted woods, and you'll see exactly how I do this as the video progresses. So what we see here is me basically prepping this lot to get the different levels that I wanted. I kept the original trees that were on the lot. This lot is in Glimmerbrook, and I start off by creating a path that is fairly random. I just wanted to go from one side of the lot to the other, in a bit of a windy, turny way. And then I go over and just start going along the path and gradually increasing the level of the terrain so that the path is kind of in its own little valley. Now, as we progress, you're going to see that I start putting a house over on the right front corner of the lot, and that house stays there. It is a very tiny home. It's literally a 2-room house. We've got one big room and a very small bathroom on the ground floor, and then on the first floor is a bedroom. It does take a while for me to get the terrain looking the way I wanted it to. I think this is probably the most I've ever worked with terrain in any lot in The Sims 4. The inspiration for my build here was basically taken from doing a quick Google search of fantasy woodland and fantasy witches' huts, basically. And I took 4 different images that I found and kind of amalgamated them all into one. Wanted the little cabin to be rustic looking, but also have a bit of charm. So you will see lots of wood and natural ingredients, if you want to call it that, in the build of this. The roof is got a lot of roof pieces, just because of the design that I was going for. Your typical witches type hut. So you have the very storybook looking roof. It took me forever to get this roof to look the way I wanted it to. And even then I didn't get it 100%, but it was as close as I could. There we are, there's the roof that's nearly finished. It just needed to add a little bit of final touches. Once I had finished terrain, I decided to do the house first because I knew that I wanted the house to be set in the middle of the woods, and I was afraid that once I got all of the trees and plants in, that building the house was going to be a pain in the neck. And I'm really glad that I did the house first because, yeah, it got to the point I put so many plants and trees on this lot that it was almost impossible at the end to really do much of anything. Really glad I put the house in first and not last. Adding in the windows, and again, I wanted the cabin to be like a little storybook cabin in the middle of the woods, and I thought that these windows here with the shutters were perfect. Cottage living pack really helped to add a lot to this build. So I'm enabling debug because I wanted to make a bespoke chimney. Instead of just a chimney being on the rooftop, I wanted one going up the actual wall of the house. And instead of making a fake chimney out of walls, I thought, oh, I'll use debug objects. It ended up being pretty nice looking, I think, but it took so long to complete. I sized the bottom one up, as you can see here, and I really liked how it intruded into the house. And my first thought was, oh, I can turn this into like part of the fireplace. Unfortunately, it didn't work out that way, and I changed it later. It's really a shame, though, that I couldn't get it to work, because it would have been so cool had I been able to turn that into an actual fireplace. I am just messing around here with this one particular block, trying to make like a wonky style chimney. It looks alright, but there are definitely different things that I could do to it to make it better, and I do improve on it later on. But first I start adding a few little things as I see it in debug to the build to start bringing it all together, such as these debug grave markers and the path. Again, I change these path stones a little bit going through because I noticed that because of the terrain being uneven, the stepping stones here kind of hover above the ground, which really annoyed the daylights out of me, so I do a little trick later on to try to fix that. It is, for those of you who are familiar with it, it is the basement trick. And you can see here the problem that I'm having with everything kind of hovering over the surface of the ground. My first thought was, oh, I'll just hide it with plants. But it really started annoying me, so I did the basement trick anyway, it's fine. Or it will be fine. Alright, working more on the chimney with debug rocks, size down of course. The way I build is once one thing starts frustrating me, I'll go on and do other things, and then come back to the thing that was starting to frustrate me. And anytime that I find something, especially in debug, that I think will look good somewhere else, I don't hesitate to go over and see what I can do with it. In the instance of these big boulders here that I've sized down, I think it really added a little bit more cohesion to the chimney as it was. Now this is me trying to fix the terrain for all of these hovering stones and walls, but you can see I really don't like the way it looks, so after a while I just get out the basement tool and do the awesome basement trick, which is grabbing the items, putting them in a basement, and raising them up to ground level so that they don't hover. The game thinks that they are in the basement, but they look like they're just resting on the terrain. Makes life quite a bit easier when dealing with uneven terrain. It is a bit fiddly, but you kind of get used to it after you've dealt with it for a little while. You'll notice you can't see all of the things that I'm raising completely. I do fix that in just a minute by fiddling around with the terrain just a bit more. And I do the same thing here on the other side where the little cemetery is for the path there, and there you are. Didn't want to make the cemetery very big, just, 3 little gravestones. And again, I've just noticed that the gravestones are floating, which I try to hide with plants, and then do the basement tool again to fix them, especially that big one there, which was such a pain in the neck. Now, the neat thing about doing it this way is since the game thinks that those things are technically in a basement, your Sims will walk right through them, so it does help a lot with pathing issues. I wanted to make this as magical as possible, so yeah, I added in pretty much every type of enchanted or magical tree you could think of. So we got that tree there that's supposed to be in Willow Creek. That leads you to the Sylvan Glade, I believe it is. But yeah, that's in debug, and you can literally put it on any lot and it'll work. I put it on this lot because I figured why not. Also put one of the magical portals from debug there in the build as well, with the path leading right up to it. Started off adding big trees and then went to little trees scattered here and there. And then started adding some lights from debug, because with this whole thing being like a woodland glade, I didn't want any sim living on this lot to have to pay a huge electric bill, because it doesn't make sense being in the middle of the woods. So I put a bunch of debug lighting, which doesn't cost your sim any electricity, as well as off-the-grid lighting inside the house as much as I could. Had to put that little gem tree there. I did go into live mode when I was finished with the build, and grew that tree using debug cheats. And then going from the bird's eye view, top-down, whatever you want to call it, started adding little trees, including the little Christmas trees with sparkly lights here and there, just to provide a bit more light along the path. And it looks nice at night. And once I'd finished putting in all the trees that I was going to put in, I started just applying tons of undergrowth. So bushes, ferns, flowers, you name it, I just plastered the entire build in a wide variety of little plants. As much debug as I could because I wanted this to look nice, but I didn't want it to be a super expensive lot. Adding a little bit of ivy and fernage on top of the ruins just to make it look a little bit more overgrown. Those dangling ferns are one of my favorite plants. Absolutely love them. Use them in every chance I get. I like using those. Same thing with those lavenders. Absolutely love them. And again, I put them pretty much everywhere. I have to admit, at one point, I was thinking, am I putting too much plant life in this build? Am I putting too much ivy? Am I putting too many ferns? And the answer was no. The answer is always no. You can never put too much plants in a build. Again, more ferns growing up the chimney here. Again, just to break up all of that gray and give it more of a rustic vibe. Adding even more ivy, but this time on the house. Retrospect, I should have added the ivy and the plants going up the house earlier, before I put all the trees down, because it did get a little bit difficult, but it worked out fine. Definitely, this is another, one of my favorite plants to use. If I'm gonna make a house that's overgrown with greenery, wisteria is definitely one of the ways to do it. All I can say is thank goodness we can raise and lower objects and size things up and down to fit. Because if we couldn't, there's no way I would have been able to put that much wisteria on the house. There were a few little bits here that I didn't like, so I added these plants from Cottage Living just to try to blend the wisteria in a little bit more. Add in even more flowers and ferns. I was afraid that I didn't want Sims to go into the lot through certain ways, so I put plants down, non-debug plants, to kind of like in a bid to keep Sims from doing anything but following the paths that I created. So I didn't want Sims to get stuck, basically. These mushrooms are so cute. I try not to overuse them, but anytime I'm doing a magical build, I've got to use these mushrooms. Anytime I'm putting in plants in The Sims, I always start with large plants, such as with the large trees, and then move downwards to flowers. And it's the same thing with the flowers. I always go from the large flowers and work down to the smaller ones. When you're putting down plants, do not be afraid to turn on Move Objects cheat and overlap the flowers. To me, it just makes the garden look a lot better and a lot more realistic. Doing the basement cheat again here because I didn't really like the way that fence looked, so I thought some flowers along the bottom edge of the fence would look nice. Because of the uneven terrain, I knew that they would float above the surface, so doing the basement cheat here to get the flowers to basically look the way I wanted them to. This entire video, by the way, is sped up, and I've cut a lot of it out. Originally, it took me over 3 hours to build this entire lot, and most of it was little fine fiddling like this. You can see I was really having problems being able to see past the canopy of the trees there. This is a very crowded build, but I really like the way it turned out. Just flattening the terrain here inside the fencing area because I wanted to put in some cottage living crop fields. I didn't want to put planters because they just didn't look right in my opinion. So I went ahead and put in the cottage living little crop fields. Moving it to the inside of the house, like I said, I wanted this to be a witch's cabin, as well as, you know, Halloween style. So we got your Halloween treat bowl there. I put the gym table in. Little chicken coop, and yes, putting in the chicken coop meant that I had to remove a lot of the plants in that area, but it's fine. I thought the chicken coop was a really cute little addition. Once I put the chicken coop in, I'm like, okay, we have to have more wildlife. So I put the bunny rabbit stump as well as the bird stump, and then added a few crystal grids. Even though, you know, it's completely covered with trees and the grids aren't going to get any moonshine or moonlight for the crystals to charge, they're still, the way the game works, your crystals will still charge on them, but yeah. The idea of the character that's meant for this lot is that you have a little hedge witch, basically, who cuts gems and makes jewelry and does, you know, little witchy things. I purposely did not put a wand in this build at all. I wanted it to be, you know, basically, yeah, a hedge witch where she basically sells food and gems, maybe some potions through working on the cauldron, you know, stuff like that. put the wishing well in. I love this little wishing well, and I never add it to my builds, but I thought this time it'll be perfect. A section off this corner because originally I was gonna have a bathroom, you know, a toilet and such, like just in the corner open, but because of or underneath the stairs. But then I realized there's not enough room to put stairs. I'm gonna have to put a ladder, and because of the way the house is shaped, I couldn't put the ladder against the wall where I wanted it. So cornered off that little bit of the ground floor to make it look like the ladder, you know, is structurally sound. And that will be the bathroom later on. And here I'm trying to figure out a way to get the little mantle stone that I wanted to incorporate in with the fireplace to work with one of the fireplaces. Couldn't get it to work, sadly. So I move it. Start off with that little fireplace there. That gets changed later on to an actual stove fireplace, or a wood-burning stove, not instead of a wood-burning fireplace, just so that the sim living in the hut doesn't have to go all the way to the cauldron in order to cook things constantly. Again, trying to keep everything to like a country style vibe and off the grid as much as possible, which is why I changed showers there. So technically, if your sim lives here, you should not be paying an electricity bill. At least that's the idea. There is a computer up top that you'll see later on. I put a desk with a computer, but that should be the only electrical item. That and the refrigerator should be the only electrical items in the build. I also moved the bed in just a moment from the ground floor up top. Once I realized, oh wait, I've got a whole first floor here, because I really wanted some seating downstairs. And with the bed there was just no way. So move the bed upstairs, there we go, and turn this little area here into a proper kitchen and dining room. We got the seance table instead of a proper dining room table. I put the seance table again because, you know, witch. Figured that would be another way to get a bit more money in. Could always be the Sims career, paranormal investigator. Add in that threadbare rug. I love that threadbare rug, and I know that there is a non-threadbare version, but I just love the threadbare one. It just adds a lot more character and just makes your build feel, instead of brand new, gives it that little bit of age. When I first started this build, I thought I'm gonna limit myself to specific packs and kits, and that did not end up working. So I do apologize if you end up downloading this from the gallery. It is on the gallery, or you will need a lot of kits and packs in order to download this. Really wanted that moon mirror there, but with the taps, it just did not work out, so I moved it. The mirror still works where it is, it's just, unfortunately, yeah, I couldn't go over the sink. Stupid taps. I really enjoyed this collaboration, so a huge thanks to Simspiration for creating the collaboration and inviting me to be part of it. And I highly recommend that you check out all the other content creators who made content for this collaboration as well, because they are all seriously, seriously awesome. And I will now stop talking and let you enjoy the rest of the build.